Hello, viewers of the future. I'm sorry this image is like completely lightly blown out. I don't know how to solve it, and it's just mostly the time I'm recording. Also, sorry there haven't been any updates. Just things have been coming up. My dad actually changed the room right here into his office, which he's obviously allowed to. But the last few times I've tried to record, he was working, and A, I can't really tell him to not speak, and B, it would probably be picked up on the mic. So that means I wasn't able to record on the times I wanted to. Plus sickness and other stuff. I've just got to record when my dad's not awake, pretty much. Until I move. Once I move, it'll be a little bit better. I think. Hopefully. Question mark. Anyways. Back to Color of Magic. Last time, because you're definitely going to need this update, we were brought to... I don't even know... Yeah. They were brought to Krull for some unknown reason. Their life will be rich, full of riches and comfort, but not very long. So we don't know what's going to happen to Rincewind and Twoflower, but they're captives for Krull now. Special captives. Like, they did a lot of magical stuff to get them here. And now we join them in their prison cell. Rincewind and Twoflower regained their balance and stared around the room in which they now found themselves. Gosh, said Twoflower ineffectively, after a pause during which he had tried unsuccessfully to find a better word. This is a prison cell? Wondered Rincewind out loud. All that gold and silk and stuff? Twoflower added. I've never seen anything like it. In the center of the richly decorated room, on a carpet that was so deep and furry that Rincewind trotted on it gingerly, lest it be some kind of shaggy, floor-loving beast, was a long, gleaming table laden with food. Most were fish dishes, including the biggest and most orientally prepared lobster Rincewind had ever seen. But there were also plenty of bowls and platters piled with strange creatures that he had never seen before. He reached out cautiously and picked up some sort of purple fruit crusted with green crystals. Candied sea urchins, said a cracked, cheerful voice behind him. A great delicacy. He dropped it quickly and turned around. An old man had stepped out from behind the heavy curtains. He was tall, thin, and looked almost benign compared to some of the faces Rincewind had seen recently. The puree of sea cucumbers is very good, too, said the face, conversationally. Those little green bits are baby starfish. Thank you for telling me, said Rincewind weakly. Actually, they're rather good, said Twoflower, his mouth full. I thought you liked seafood. Yes, I thought I did, said Rincewind. What's this wine? Crushed octopus eyeballs? Sea grapes, said the old man. Great, said Rincewind, and swallowed a glassful. Not bad. A bit salty, maybe. Sea grapes is a kind of small jellyfish, explained the stranger, and now I really think I should introduce myself. Was he your friend? Why is your friend gone that strange color? Culture shock, I imagine, said Twoflower. What did you say your name was? I didn't. It's Garhartra. I'm the guest master, you see. It is my pleasant task to make sure that your stay here is as delightful as possible, he bowed. If there is anything you want, you have only to say. Twoflower sat down on the oriental mother-of-pearl chairs with a glass of oily wine in one hand and a crystallized squid in the other. He frowned. Okay. I think I've missed something along the way, he said. First we were told we were going to be slaves. A base canard, interrupted Garhartra. What's a canard? Said Twoflower. I think it's a kind of duck, said Rincewind from the far end of the long table. Are those biscuits made of something really nauseating, do you suppose? And then we were rescued at great magical expense. They're made of pressed seaweed, snapped the guest master. But then we're threatened, also at a very expenditude of magic. Yes, I thought it would be something like seaweed, agreed Rincewind. They certainly taste like seaweed would taste if anyone was masochistic enough to eat seaweed. And then we were manhandled by guards and thrown in here. Pushed gently, corrected Garhartra, which turned out to be an amazingly rich room, and there's all this food and a man saying he's devoted his life to making us happy, Twoflower concluded. What I'm getting at is this is sort of a lack of consistency. Yar, said Rincewind. What he means is, Are you about to start being generally unpleasant again? Is this just a break for lunch? Garhartra held up his hand reassuringly. Please, please, he protested. It was just necessary to get you here as soon as possible. We certainly do not want to enslave you. Please be reassured on that score. Well, fine, said Rincewind. Yes, you will be. Yes, you will in fact be sacrificed. Garhartra continued placidly. Sacrificed? You're gonna kill us? Shouted the wizard. Kill? Yes, of course, certainly. It would hardly be a sacrifice if we didn't, would it? But don't worry, it'll be comparatively painless. Comparatively? Compared to what? Said Rincewind. He picked up a tall green bottle that was full of sea grape jellyfish wine and hurled it hard at the guest master, who flung up a hand as if to protect himself. There was a crack of octarine flames from his fingers, and the air suddenly took on the thick, greasy feel that indicated a powerful magic discharge. The flung bottle slowed and then stopped in mid-air, rotating gently. At the same time, an invisible force picked Rincewind up and hurled him down the length of the room, pinning him awkwardly halfway up the far wall, with no breath left in his body. He hung there with his mouth open in rage and astonishment. Garhartra lowered his hand and brushed it slowly on his robes. I didn't enjoy doing that, you know, he said. I could tell, muttered Rincewind. But what do you want to sacrifice us for? Asked Twoflower. You hardly know us. That's rather the point, isn't it? It's not very good manners to sacrifice a friend. Besides, you were, specificated. Specified? I don't know a lot about the gods in question, but he was quite clear on that point. Look, I must be running along now. So much to organize. You know how it is, said the guest master. The guest master opened the door and then peered back around it. Please make yourselves comfortable and don't worry. But you haven't actually told us anything, wailed Twoflower. It's not really worth it, is it? What with you being sacrificed in the morning, said Garhartra. It's hardly worth the bother of knowing, really. Sleep well, comparatively well, anyways. He shut the door. A brief octarine flicker of bale fire around it suggested that it had now been sealed beyond the skills of any earthly locksmith. Glint, clank, tang went the bells along the circumfence in the moonlit, rimfall roaring night. Turton, lengthman of the 45 length, hadn't heard such a clanging since the night a giant kraken had been swept into the fence 5 years ago. He leaned out of his hut, which for the lack of any convenient iota on the length had been built on wooden piles driven into the seabed, and stared into the darkness. Once or twice he thought he could see movement far off. Strictly speaking, he should row out to see what was causing the din. But here in the clammy darkness, it didn't seem like an astonishingly good idea. So he slammed the door, wrapped some sackings around the madly jingling bells, and tried to get back to sleep. That didn't work, because even the top strand of the fence was thrumming now, as if something big and heavy was bouncing on it. After staring at the ceiling for a few minutes, and trying hard not to think of great long tentacles and pond-sized eyes, Tetron blew out the lantern and opened the door a crack. Something was coming along the fence, in giant looping bounds that covered meters at a time. It loomed up at him, and for a moment Tetron saw something rectangular multi-legged, shaggy with seaweed, and, although it had absolutely no features from which he could have deducted this, it was also very angry indeed. The hut was smashed to fragments as the monster charged through it, although Turton survived by clinging to the circumfence. Some weeks later he was picked up by a returning salvage fleet, subsequently escaped from Kroll on the hijacked lens, having developed hydrophobia to an astonishing degree, and after a number of adventures eventually found his way to the Great Nerf, an area of the disk so dry that it actually had negative rainfall, which he nevertheless considered uncomfortably damp. Have you tried the door? Yes, said Twoflower, and it isn't any less locked than it was last time you asked. There's the window, though. A great way of escape, muttered Rincewind, from his perch halfway up the wall. You said it looked over the edge. Just step out, and plunge through space and maybe free solid or hit some other world at incredible speeds or plunge wildly into the burning heart of a star. Worth a try, said Twoflower. Want a seaweed biscuit? No! When are you coming down? Rincewind snarled. This was partly an embarrassment. Gar-Hartra's spell had been the little used and hard to master, Aviator's personal gravitational upset. The particular result of which was that until it wore off, Rincewind's body was convinced that down lay at 90 degrees to that direction normally accepted as a Rincewind's body was convinced that down lay at 90 degrees to that direction normally accepted as of a downward persuasion by the majority of the disk's inhabitants. He was, in fact, standing on the wall. Meanwhile, the flung bottle hung supportless in the air a few yards away. In its case, time had, well, not actually been stopped, but had been slowed by several orders of magnitude, and its trajectory had so far occupied several hours and a couple of inches as far as Rincewind and Twoflower were concerned. The glass gleamed in the moonlight. Rincewind sighed and tried to make himself comfortable on the wall. Why don't you ever worry? He demanded petulantly. Here we are, going to be sacrificed to some god or other in the morning, and you just sit there eating barnacle canaps. I expect something will turn up, said Twoflower. I mean, it's not as if we know why we're going to be killed, the wizard went on. You'd like to know, would you? Did you say that? Say what? You're hearing things, said a voice in Rincewind's head. He sat bolt sideways. Who are you? He demanded. Twoflower gave him a worried look. I'm Twoflower, he said. Surely you remember? Rincewind put his head in his hands. It's happening at last, he moaned. I'm going out of my mind. Good idea, said the voice. It's getting pretty crowded in here. The spell pinning Rincewind to the wall vanished with a faint pop. He fell forward and landed in a heap on the floor. Careful, you nearly squashed me. Rincewind struggled to his elbows and reached into the pocket of his robe. When he withdrew his hand, the green frog was sitting on it, its eyes oddly illuminated in the half-light. You? Said Rincewind. Put me down on the floor and stand back. The frog blinked. The wizard did so, and dragged a bewildered Twoflower out of the way. The room darkened. There was a windy roaring sound. Streams of green and purple and octarine clouds appeared out of nowhere and began to spiral rapidly towards the recumbent amphibian, shedding small bolts of lightning as they whirled. Soon the frog was lost in a golden haze which began to elongate upward, filling the room with a warm yellow light. Within it was a darker, indistinctive shape, which wavered and changed even as they watched, and all the time there was the high, brain-curdling whine of a huge magical field. As suddenly as it had appeared, the magic tornado vanished, and there, occupying the space where the frog had been, was a frog. Fantastic, said Rincewind. The frog gazed at him reproachfully. Really amazing, said Rincewind sourly. A frog magically transformed into a frog. Wondrous. Turn around, said a voice behind them. It was a soft, feminine voice, almost an inviting voice, the sort of voice you could have a few drinks with, but is coming from a spot where there ought to be a voice at all. They managed to turn without really moving, like a couple of statues revolving on plinths. There was a woman standing there in the pre-dawn light. In point of actual fact, Later, Rincewind and Twoflower couldn't quite agree on any single fact about her, except that she had appeared to be beautiful. Precisely what physical features made her beautiful they could not defiantly state, and that she had green eyes. Not the pale green of ordinary eyes, either. These were the green of fresh emeralds and iridescent as dragonflies. Yeah. and one of the few genuine magical facts that Rincewind knew was that no god or goddess, contrary and volatile as they may be in all other respects, could change the color or nature of their eyes. He began. She raised the hand. You know, she raised the hand. You know that if you say my name, I must depart, she hissed. Surely you recall that I am the one goddess who comes only when not invoked? Yes, I suppose I do, croaked the wizard, trying not to look at the eyes. You're the one they call the lady? Yes. Are you a goddess, then? Said Twoflower excitedly. I've always wanted to meet one. Rincewind tensed, waiting for the explosion of rage. Instead, the lady merely smiled. Your friend the wizard should introduce us, she said. Rincewind coughed. Yar. He said. This is Twoflower. Lady, he's a tourist. Okay. I have attended him on a number of occasions. And Twoflower, this is the lady. Just the lady, right? Nothing else. Don't try and give her any other names, okay? He went on desperately, his eyes darting meaningfully glances that were totally lost on the little man. Rincewind shivered. He was not, of course, an atheist. On the disc, the gods dealt severely with atheists. On the few occasions when he had some spare change, he had always made a point of dropping a few coppers into the temple coffers somewhere, on the principle that a man needed all the friends he could get. But usually he didn't bother the gods, and he hoped the gods wouldn't bother him. Life was quite complicated enough. There were two gods, however, who were really terrifying. The rest of the gods were usually only sort of large-scale humans, fond of wine and war and whoring, but Fate and Lady were chilling. In the gods' quarters in Ankh-Morpork, Fate had a small, heavy-laden temple where hollow-eyed and gauntlet worshippers met on dark nights for their predestined and fairly pointless rites. There were no temples at all to the lady, although she was arguably the most powerful goddess in the entire history of this creation. A few of the more daring members of the Gamblers' Guild had once experimented with a form of worship in the deepest cellars of guild hall headquarters, and had all died of penitry, murder, or just death within the week. She was the goddess who must not be named. Those who sought her never found her, yet she was known to come to the aid of those in greatest need. And then again, sometimes she didn't. She was like that. She didn't like the clicking of rosaries, but was attracted to the sound of dice. No man knew what she looked like, although there were many times when a man who was gambling his life on the turn of the cards would pick up the hand he had been dealt and stare her full in the face. Of course, sometimes he didn't. Among the gods, she was at one and the same time the most courted and the most cursed. We don't have gods where I come from, said Twoflower. You do, you know, said the lady. Everyone has gods. You just don't think they're gods. Rincewind shook himself mentally. Look, he said, I don't want to sound impatient, but in a few minutes some people are going to come through that door and take us away and kill us. Yes, said the lady. I suppose you wouldn't tell us why? Said Twoflower. Yes, said the lady. The Krullins intend to launch a bronze vessel over the edge of the disk, and their prime purpose is to learn the sex of Attune the world turtle. Seems rather pointless, said Rincewind. Okay. No. Consider, one day Great Attune may encounter another member of the species, Chelseliglacius, somewhere in the vast night in which we move. Will they fight? Will they mate? A little imagination will show you that the sex of Great Attune could be very important to us. At least, so the Krullians say. Rincewind tried not to think of the world turtle mating. It wasn't completely easy. So, continued the goddess, they intend to launch this ship of space. With 2 voyagers aboard. It will be the accumulation of decades of research. It will also be very dangerous for the travelers, and so, in an attempt to reduce the risks, the arch-astronomer of Krull has bargained with Fate to sacrifice 2 men at the moment of launch. Fate, in his turn, had agreed to smile on the spaceship. A neat bargain, is it not? A barter, is it not? And where the sacrifices, said Rincewind? Yes. I I think fate didn't go in for that sort. I thought fate didn't go in for that sort of bargaining. I thought fate was impalpable, said Rincewind. Normally, yes, but you two have been a thorn in his side for some time. He specified, I can't say that word, that the sacrifices should be you. He allowed you to escape from the pirates. He allowed you to drift into the circumfence. Fate can be one mean god at times. There was a pause. The frog sighed and wandered off under the table. But you could help us? prompted Twoflower. You amuse me, said the lady. Also, they're her chips, so... I have a sentimental streak. You'd know that if you were a gambler's. So for a little while I rode in a frog's mind, and you kindly rescued me, for, as we all know, no one likes to see pathetic and helpless creatures swept to their death. Thank you, said Rincewind. The whole mind of fate is bent against you, said the lady, but all I can do is give you one chance, just one small chance. The rest is up to you. She vanished. Gosh, said Twoflower after a while, that's the first time I've ever seen a goddess. The door swung open. Garhatra. This name is Garhartra. Garhartra entered, holding a wand in front of him. Behind him were two guards, armed more conveniently with swords. Guess we're stopping there. So let's do that paragraph right. The door swung open. Garhatra entered, holding a wand in front of him. Behind him were two guards, armed more conveniently with swords. And that's where we're ending it. I know, a cliffhanger, it stinks, but it's 20 minutes. I kinda gotta keep with the schedule. Sometimes I pass if I'm in the middle of a paragraph, but yeah, that's the paragraph. So, the lady's helping them. Yes, for those wondering, Lady is Lady Luck, and she has chips of them. Like, they have a board with players, and for some reason, Lady picked up Rincewind and Twoflower. I mean, I can see later on, knowing the future of these books, why she picked up Rincewind, but yeah, so they're her chips. She kind of somewhat wants to keep them alive, but she can't do much. It is fate she's going against, and even luck can't destroy fate. So she'll give them a chance, and we'll see that chance in the next section. So, I have been Endragh. This has been Color of Magic. I hope I brought a smile to your face, and I will see you tomorrow night. Night-night, guys.